Is it really wrong for a Christian to consume too much alcohol, to consume drugs, to do drugs? Because Mark chapter 7 seems to suggest no. Jesus says in verse 18 of chapter 7, don't you realize that nothing going into a person from the outside can defile him? According to this logic, somebody might say, doesn't that mean that there's nothing wrong with doing drugs? There's nothing wrong with consuming too much alcohol because nothing going into a person from the outside can defile him. That's Jesus's words. The answer to that question is, of course, no. It is wrong for us to consume too much alcohol, for us to do drugs, for us to consume pornography. But Jesus isn't wrong here. Jesus is actually correct. The action of something going into you isn't what is a sin. It's what comes out, either before or after, that is the sin. Take alcohol, for example. It's not the act of one sip of alcohol that makes it a sin. That's why, for example, if a person was forced to drink a sip of alcohol, they haven't sinned just because something went into them and that the alcohol itself is sinful. The problem is if you drink too much alcohol, what comes out of you is something that's nasty, some part of you that isn't real to yourself. Maybe it's extreme anger, maybe it's a loss of control of rationality, something that God has given us, of our reason that God has given us to use. So the sin isn't the drink going into you. The sin is what comes out of you, either that causes you to drink or that comes out of you as a result of your drinking. Take drugs, for example. It's not that the act of smoking pot is sinful because pot itself just is inherently evil. There's nothing inherently evil about a plant. The sin part of it is either the intention, where you're trying to escape something and trying to rely on something other than God, which is your intention, or the result, namely that you've lost some control of your reasoning and your faculties, maybe that you've lost some brain cells. In the same way, even, and I know this is strange, but even pornography, it's not the act of consuming pornography that's a sin, it's the desire to consume pornography and then the lustful thoughts and harm that results from it. I am not saying that all three of these things, drinking too much alcohol, doing drugs, consuming pornography, that those things are not sinful. What I'm saying is the reason why they are sinful is because of what results. So when Jesus says nothing going into a person defiles him, it's what comes out, he's entirely correct. It's not the act of drinking alcohol, of consuming drugs, of happening to watch pornography. It's the lustful thoughts that result. It's the anger that results. It's the loss of faculties that results. That is why the action is sinful. And that's exactly what Jesus says. In verse 20, he says, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of a person's heart, come evil thoughts, sexual immoralities, thefts, murder, adultery, greed, evil actions, deceit, self-indulgence, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All those things coming out of a person are what defiles him.